Eduardo Chillida Juantegui, or Eduardo Txillida Juantegi in Basque, was a Spanish Basque sculptor notable for his monumental abstract works. Early life and career. Born in San Sebastian to the Major Pedro Chillida and the soprano Carmen Juantegui on 10 January 1924, Eduardo Chillida grew up near the Biarritz Hotel, which was owned by his grandparents. Chillida had been the goalkeeper for Real Sociedad, San Sebastian's La Liga football team, where his knee was so seriously injured that he had 5 surgeries, ending a promising football career. He then studied architecture at the University of Madrid from 1943 to 1946. In 1947 he abandoned architecture for art, and the next year he moved to Paris, where he set up his first studio and began working in plaster and clay. He never finished his degree and instead began to take private art lessons. He lived in Paris from 1948 to 50 and at Villens-sous-Bois from 1950 to 1955. In 1950 Chillida married Pilar Belzuns and later returned to the San Sebastian area, first to the nearby village of Hernani and in 1959 to the city of his birth, where he remained. He died at his home near San Sebastian at the age of 78. Work. Chillida's earliest sculptures concentrated on the human form. His later works tended to be more massive and more abstract, and included many monumental public works. Chillida himself tended to reject the label of abstract, preferring instead to call himself a realist sculptor. Upon returning to the Basque Country in 1951, Chillida soon abandoned the plaster he used in his Paris works, a medium suited to his study of archaic figurative works in the Louvre. Living near Hernani, he began to work in forged iron with the help of the local blacksmith, and soon set up a forge in his studio. From 1954 until 1966, Chillida worked on a series entitled Anvil of Dreams, in which he used wood for the first time as a base from which the metal forms rise up in explosive rhythmic curves. He began to make sculpture in alabaster 1965. Rather than turn over a maquette of a sculpture to fabricators, as many modern artists do, Chillida worked closely with the men in the foundry. He then usually added an alloy that caused the metal to take on a brilliant rust color as it oxidizes. From quite early on, Chillida's sculpture found public recognition, and in 1954 he produced the 4 doors for the Basilica of Aranzazu, where works by other leading Basque sculptors, George Otiza, Agustina Barala and Nesta Basterrecha, were also being installed. The following year, he carved a stone monument to the discoverer of penicillin, Sir Alexander Fleming, for a park in San Sebastian. By the early 1970s, his steel sculptures had been installed in front of the UNESCO headquarters in Paris, the ThyssenKrupp building in Dusseldorf, and in a courtyard at the World Bank offices in Washington. At the best, his works, although massive and monumental, suggest movement and tension. For example, the largest of his works in the United States, De Musica, is an 81-ton steel sculpture featuring 2 pillars with arms that reach out but do not touch. Much of Chillida's work is inspired by his Basque upbringing, and many of his sculptures' titles are in the Basque language euskera. His steel sculpture De Musica 3 was exhibited at the Yorkshire Sculpture Park in the UK, as part of a retrospective of Chillida's work. Chillida also conceived a distinguished oeuvre of etchings, lithographs and woodcuts since 1959, including illustrations for George Gillian's Marsala and various other books. Chillida Leku. In the 1990s, Chillida set up a foundation for the display of his work at the Chillida Leku's centered on an old farmhouse in the Basque countryside. Today there is an outdoor sculpture garden dedicated to his work. Monument to Tolerance, Fuerteventura. According to Chillida's plans for a monument of tolerance, an artificial cave is to be bored into the mountain. The huge cubic cave, measuring 40 meters along each side, is to be dug from inside a mountain that has long been revered by the inhabitants of the dusty, barren island to the south of Lanzarote. About 64,000 cubic meters of rock will be taken away from the mountain, which rises out of an arid landscape in the north of the island, to create what Chillida called his monument to tolerance. Chillida's original idea was for visitors to experience the immensity of the space. The project has been in development since 1994, 8 years before Chillida's death. In 2011, local authorities decided to go ahead with a project by Chillida inside Mount India on Fuerteventura despite concerns from environmentalists. As of 2013, local officials are continuing to seek €75 million in private funding. Dialogue with Heidegger. In the early 1960s, Eduardo Chillida engaged into a dialogue with the German philosopher Martin Heidegger. When the two men met, they discovered that, from different angles, they were working with space in the same way. Heidegger wrote, "We would have to learn to recognize that things themselves are places and do not merely belong to a place, and that sculpture is thereby the embodiment of places, against a traditional view of space as an empty container for discrete bodies." These writings understand the body as already beyond itself in a world of relations and conceive of space as a material medium of relational contact. Sculpture shows us how we belong to the world, a world in the midst of a technological process of uprooting and homelessness. Heidegger suggests how we can still find room to dwell therein. Chillida has been quoted as saying, "My whole work is a journey of discovery in space. Space is the liveliest of all, the one that surrounds us. I do not believe so much in experience. I think it is conservative. I believe in perception, which is something else. It is riskier and more progressive. There is something that still wants to progress and grow. Also, this is what I think makes you perceive, and perceiving directly acts upon the present but with one foot firmly planted in the future. Experience, on the other hand, does the contrary. You are in the present but with one foot in the past. In other words, I prefer the position of perception. All of my work is the progeny of the question. I am a specialist in asking questions, some without answers." Other philosophers who have written respectfully about Chillida and his works include Gaston Bachelard and Octavio Paz. Exhibitions. Chillida exhibited his early work in 1949 in the Salon de Mai at the Musée d'Art Moderne in Paris, and the next year took part in Les Mains Éblouies, a show of post-war art at the Galerie Mate. After his first solo exhibition at the Clan Gallery in Madrid in 1954, Chillida exhibited his work in more than 100 one-man shows. He also participated in many international exhibitions, including the Venice Biennale, the Pittsburgh International, where he received the Carnegie Prize for Sculpture in 1964 and, in 1978, shared the Andrew W. Mellon Prize with Willem de Kooning, and Documenta 2, IV&I. His first comprehensive retrospective in the United States was mounted by the Museum of Fine Arts, Houston, in 1966. Major retrospectives of Chillida's graphic and sculptural work have since been mounted by the National Gallery in Washington, D.C., Solomon R. Guggenheim Museum in New York, Palacio de Miramar in San Sebastian, and the Museo Nacional Centro de Arte Reina Sofía in Madrid and the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao, Spain. Major public works. Major public works by Chillida are in Barcelona, Berlin, Paris, Frankfurt and Dallas. A large body of his work can be seen in San Sebastian, including Hyzene Orazia installed in the sea in La Conca at San Sebastian. Perhaps his best-known work in the United States is in front of the IMP-designed Meyerson Symphony Center in Dallas. The work features two pillars with branches that reach out but do not touch. In Washington, a Chillida sculpture is inside the World Bank headquarters. A sculpture by Chillida also sits outside Beverly Hills City Hall. In 1986 he installed House of Goethe, a large piece that is a tribute to the German poet and dramatist Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, in the city of Frankfurt. His monument Dialogo Tolerantia was installed in Munster in 1993 to celebrate the Peace of Westphalia. Collections. Chillida's sculptures have been collected by major museums, including the Museum of Modern Art and the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, the Tate Britain in London, the Kunsthalle Basel in Switzerland, and the Neue National Gallery in Berlin. In 1986 the Chillida collection of the Museo Nacional Centro de Arte Reina Sofia in Madrid was inaugurated. Chillida designed the museum's logo, honors and awards. In 2002, Vitoria, the capital of the Basque Country, awarded its gold medal, the city's highest honor, posthumously to Chillida and the architect Luis Peña Ganchegui, for building a square that has come to symbolize Basque emergence following Spain's return to democracy. Other honors include recipient of the Lifetime Achievement in Contemporary Sculpture Award, International Sculpture Center, recipient of the Premium Imperial in Sculpture, recipient of the Premio Príncipe de Asturias de las Artes, recipient of the Wolf Prize in Sculpture, elected an honorary academician by the Royal Academy. Art market. In 2006, Chillida's classic 1961 sculpture, Rumor de Limits, more than doubled estimates to sell to a collective from the Iberian Peninsula for a record £2 million in London. His corten steel sculpture Buscando la Luz Ivy was sold for £4.1 million at Christie's London in 2013.